Picture this: a woman who has spent decades reshaping her public image, weathering scandal, enduring public hatred, and eventually earning the title of queen, is quietly told she is not welcome in a wing of a royal estate. No dramatic confrontation, no public announcement, just a stack of legal documents, a sealed door, and a message that could not be any clearer if it had been carved into the stone walls of Sandringham itself. This is not fiction. This is the House of Windsor in 2026. And the woman who sent that message? Not a rival politician, not a foreign dignitary, not even a powerful courtier operating in the shadows of the palace. It was Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, the most decorated, most disciplined, and arguably the most quietly formidable woman in the entire British royal family. She has drawn a line, a legal one, and in doing so, she has ignited one of the most extraordinary property disputes in modern royal history. But to understand what is really happening at Sandringham right now, you cannot start with the lawyers. You have to start with the land itself. There are places in Britain that carry history in their soil, and Sandringham is one of them. Stretching across 20,000 acres of rolling Norfolk parkland, approximately 110 miles north of London, Sandringham is not simply a grand house with a famous name. It is the private heartbeat of the British monarchy. It is the place where the royal family stops performing and simply exists, away from the cameras, the protocols, and the relentless weight of public expectation. What makes Sandringham truly unique in the royal portfolio is this: it does not belong to the nation. It never has. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, which are technically owned by the Crown Estate on behalf of the state, Sandringham is personal property. It was first acquired in 1862 by Queen Victoria as a private gift for her son and heir, the future King Edward VII. From that moment forward, it has passed directly from one sovereign to the next, outside of any government or institutional control. When Queen Elizabeth II drew her last breath in September 2022, Sandringham passed immediately and entirely into the private ownership of King Charles III. No parliamentary approval, no public negotiation, a personal inheritance, centuries in the making. And it is not simply a single house. Sandringham is a living, breathing estate, a constellation of historic properties scattered across its vast grounds. There is Anmere Hall, where Prince William and Princess Catherine have built a quieter family life away from London. There is Park House, the modest Norfolk residence where a young Diana Spencer was born, long before she would become the most photographed woman in the world. There is the Folly. There are several working farms. And then there is Wood Farm, a significantly more modest property tucked into the estate grounds, where, as of late 2025, Prince Andrew has been quietly living after being removed from the grandeur of Royal Lodge in Windsor. For generations, access to these various corners of the Sandringham estate has been governed not by legal contracts, but by family understanding, informal agreements, gentlemen's arrangements passed down through quiet conversations rather than courtrooms. There was no need for paperwork when everyone respected the unspoken rules. That era is now over. Before we get to the lawyers, we need to talk about something that has been simmering in the background of this family for nearly 50 years. The relationship between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla has never been warm. What exists between them has been described by those closest to both women as something far colder. A mutual suspicion that has calcified over decades into something that occasionally erupts, unexpectedly and fiercely, like a fault line that everyone pretends is stable until the ground actually moves. This tension did not begin with Charles and Camilla's wedding in April 2005, though that event certainly sharpened it. It traces back to the 1970s, when Camilla Parker Bowles first became a fixture in Prince Charles's life. For those who understood what was unfolding behind closed doors, the implications were significant. That relationship, sustained in secrecy across decades, ultimately contributed to the unraveling of Charles's marriage to Princess Diana, a woman whom Princess Anne had known, watched, and in many ways quietly witnessed being destroyed from the inside. Anne does not wear her emotions publicly. She never has. She is the most stoic, the most disciplined, the most militarily precise member of the royal family. A woman who completes more royal engagements annually than almost any other working royal, who has represented the crown across the globe with zero appetite for media attention or personal sympathy. She is, in the eyes of many who work closest with the monarchy, its spine, its anchor, the one who keeps turning up regardless of what is falling apart around her. Camilla, by contrast, entered the royal family through what many within the institution privately considered one of its most painful chapters. She spent years being publicly despised, booed at events, targeted by tabloids, dismissed by courtiers who viewed her presence as a wound that the monarchy could not afford to keep reopening. She has worked hard to change that narrative, and by most measurements, she has succeeded. The British public has largely come to accept her. The institution has formally embraced her. She is queen. But acceptance from the public is not the same as acceptance from Princess Anne. And those who know both women well say that the frost between them has never fully thawed. What has changed in 2026 is that this long-standing tension now has a physical address. That address is Sandringham. To follow the chain of events that led to Princess Anne instructing her legal team to act, you need to understand what happened to Prince Andrew, because his fall did not just destroy his own position. It cracked the foundations of the family around him and forced every remaining Windsor to choose, quietly and carefully, where they stood. In October 2025, King Charles formally stripped his younger brother of everything, every remaining title, every honor, every right to reside in a crown estate property. Andrew had already been living under the shadow of his disastrous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview, a performance so catastrophically misjudged that it remains one of the most studied examples of public relations self-destruction in modern history. His friendship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein had made him a liability the palace could no longer afford to protect. The posthumous publication of a memoir by Epstein survivor Virginia Giuffre had deepened the wound further. Andrew was relocated from the sweeping grandeur of Royal Lodge, a 30-room residence near Windsor, to the considerably more modest wood farm on the Sandringham estate. Then came the morning of February 19, 2026, Andrew's 66th birthday. Unmarked police cars descended on the Sandringham estate and simultaneously on Royal Lodge in Berkshire. Andrew was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office, taken to Eltham Police Station, and held for approximately 11 hours before being released under investigation. It was the first time a sibling of the reigning monarch had been arrested since Queen Elizabeth I had her sister Mary detained in 1554. The symmetry of history made the moment feel almost surreal. King Charles responded with a statement that was as firm as it was brief. The law must take its course. And it was at precisely this moment that Princess Anne stepped into the story, and the temperature at Sandringham began to rise. According to multiple sources, Anne has been quietly but fiercely advocating for her brother throughout this ordeal, not defending his actions, not seeking to reinstate his titles or his standing, but fighting, with considerable determination, to ensure that a man she has known since birth is not stripped of his basic human dignity in the process. She reportedly raised concerns about Andrew's mental health directly with both King Charles and Prince William, describing his deteriorating state with a candor that those present found striking. Anne has been described as the driving force behind a private family effort to ensure the institution does not entirely abandon one of its own. Queen Camilla's position could not be more different. Sources close to the palace describe her as taking a firmly uncompromising stance, viewing any gesture of family solidarity toward Andrew as a direct threat to the reputation of the monarchy she has spent years helping to stabilize. She is reportedly appalled that Anne is pursuing this at all. And so the conflict over Andrew's welfare spilled, as conflicts in royal families so often do, into something more territorial, more tangible, into a dispute about space, about access, about legal rights, and about exactly who gets to decide who belongs where on the grounds of Sandringham. Here is where the story moves from family drama into something with genuine and lasting consequences. Princess Anne, through her legal representatives, has formally asserted and documented her household's private use rights over a specific wing of the Sandringham estate. This is not Anne attempting to seize property that belongs to the king. Charles owns Sandringham. That is not in dispute, and Anne knows it perfectly well. What her legal team has done is something more targeted and, in many ways, more sophisticated. In large hereditary estates across Britain, families with multi-generational claims to various properties and spaces, it is not uncommon for informal living arrangements to eventually be formalized through legal instruments. Licenses to occupy, customary use agreements, time-sharing arrangements documented by solicitors when the original goodwill that sustained the informal arrangements has dissolved. This is precisely what appears to have happened at Sandringham in 2026. The goodwill ran out, and Anne reached for the legal framework. By doing so, she has accomplished two things simultaneously. First, she has created a paper trail, a formal legal record that cannot simply be overridden by a quiet word in the right ear or a palace announcement that redraws the informal map of the estate. Whatever happens next in this family, there are now documents that say what territory belongs to whom. Second, and perhaps more importantly, she has sent a message, not to the public, not to the press, to Camilla. And the message is not subtle. This is my space, these are my rights, and I have ensured they are now protected by law rather than goodwill. The timing is not accidental. Sandringham House closes to the public every year between July 13th and August 3rd, during which time the royal family traditionally uses the estate for private summer gatherings. Word had quietly circulated that Camilla was considering using one of the estate's private wings as a personal retreat during this window, a secluded summer presence separate from King Charles, who typically travels to Balmoral in Scotland for the summer months. By acting when she did, Princess Anne has eliminated that possibility, at least in the specific area her legal team has now documented and secured. Sources indicate that Camilla is furious. The palace has made no public comment. To truly understand what is at stake for Camilla in this dispute, you have to understand her complicated, deeply personal relationship with private space, because it tells you something essential about who she is beneath the title. Unlike King Charles, whose identity has always been inseparable from his connection to land, estates, and the natural world, Camilla has historically maintained her sense of self through independence, through having somewhere that was entirely, unapologetically hers. For decades, that place was Raymill House, a stunning country estate in Wiltshire that she acquired during her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles in 1995. It was not grand by royal standards, but it was hers, a place where she could shed the performance, close the gates, and simply be a private person. That house was her sanctuary, in a way that no royal residence, with all its history and protocol, could ever replicate. In early 2026, reports emerged that Camilla had quietly transferred ownership of Raymill House. It was a move that attracted considerable attention, precisely because of what it implied, that she was now anchoring her private life entirely within the royal system, rather than retaining a refuge outside it. At the same time, King Charles purchased a neighboring Wiltshire property, further weaving their private lives together. With Raymill no longer functioning as her independent retreat and Balmoral firmly established as Charles's summer territory, Sandringham had begun to look increasingly attractive to Camilla. The estate's private gardens, which she openly admires, the relative seclusion, the lower profile, the chance to spend a summer away from the relentless demands of the London calendar without needing to leave the royal fold entirely. And then Anne's lawyers filed their documents, a door was closed, and the woman who once fought her way into this family against almost every imaginable obstacle found herself standing on the wrong side of it. If there is a figure in this story deserving of genuine sympathy, it may be King Charles himself, a man currently navigating one of the most extraordinary pressures ever faced by a sitting British monarch. His health remains a serious and ongoing concern. In December 2025, he announced a reduction in his cancer treatment schedule, a sign perhaps of stabilization but not resolution. He is governing a monarchy while managing a diagnosis that hangs over everything. His brother has been arrested. His son Harry remains estranged, perpetually visible at the edges of the family narrative through an ongoing legal battle with British tabloids that keeps the wound open in public. Support for the monarchy, while broadly stable, has been tested repeatedly in recent years. And now, at the heart of his most private estate, his sister and his wife are engaged in a legal and personal dispute that places him in an almost impossible position. Those close to the palace say Charles is deeply reluctant to intervene. He values Anne in a way that goes beyond protocol. She has been one of the most visible and unwavering sources of public support during his illness. And privately, those close to him acknowledge that her loyalty has meant more than she will ever be publicly credited for. But he also relies on Camilla in a profoundly personal way. She has been described by those within the household as the stabilizing force in his daily life, the person who has consistently helped him function through illness, controversy, and the grinding demands of kingship. Both women are formidable, neither retreats easily, and Charles, sitting between them, has so far chosen the only option that avoids an immediate confrontation: silence. It is a strategy that may buy him time. But those who know this family well are clear about what royal silence actually means. It is not neutrality. It is a postponement. And the longer the postponement, the heavier the reckoning tends to be. At Sandringham, that reckoning is now written into legal documents. And legal documents, unlike gentlemen's agreements, do not quietly disappear. Sandringham has always been more than real estate. It has been the place where the monarchy goes to remember that it is also a family, imperfect, fractured, occasionally dysfunctional, but bound together by something deeper than duty. Queen Elizabeth II loved it, with a specific and unguarded tenderness. King George VI spent his final hours there. Generations of Windsors have gathered in its rooms at Christmas, not because tradition demanded it, but because they genuinely felt, within those walls, something approaching home. What is happening now at Sandringham is not simply a dispute about who gets to use a wing for a summer holiday. It is a signal, a visible, legal, documented signal that the informal culture that once held this family together, the unspoken agreements, the shared understandings, the quiet compromises, is fracturing. When a family member instructs solicitors to formalize access rights within a private estate, it means the trust required to sustain informal arrangements no longer exists. Princess Anne has made that explicit. She is not willing to rely on goodwill that she no longer believes is there. Queen Camilla, at 78 and more confident in her position than at any previous point in her public life, is not a woman who accepts being outmaneuvered quietly. She has survived decades of public hostility, navigated the complexities of entering one of the world's most scrutinized families, and emerged with her reputation not just intact, but substantially rehabilitated. The idea that a legal document will simply redirect her plans without response seems optimistic at best. Whether she escalates, finds an alternative arrangement, or quietly regroups and waits, Camilla's next move will define the next chapter of this conflict. Meanwhile, Andrew remains at Wood Farm, under investigation, without titles, struggling by all accounts, with the weight of everything that has been taken from him. Princess Anne continues to advocate for the thread of human dignity his family still owes him, even as the institution publicly maintains its distance. At least one person in that family has not looked away. Sandringham has been many things across its long history: a Christmas gathering place, a private retreat, a working estate, the backdrop to some of the most intimate and painful moments in the life of the British royal family. It has witnessed death, joy, scandal, and quiet grace in roughly equal measure. Now, in 2026, it has become something new: a legal battleground, a physical map of a family's internal fault lines, where loyalty ends, where rivalry hardens into formal action, and where the question of who truly belongs is no longer answered by history or sentiment, but by what a solicitor can put in writing. Princess Anne has drawn her boundary. The document is filed, the wing is sealed. The only question that remains, and it is one that no legal instrument can answer, is whether this family still has enough left in common to find their way back to the same table. Because if they cannot manage it at Sandringham, the place they have always come back to, it is very hard to imagine where else they possibly could. Do you think Princess Anne was right to take legal action? Or has she set something in motion that this family cannot undo? Share your thoughts below and stay with us for continued coverage as this story develops.